Victoria grew up with the sound of ocean waves as her constant companion, in a small fishing village where time seemed to follow its own rhythm. Raised by her grandparents, Elizabeth and Oliver, she learned early on the value of hard work and honesty, traits they lovingly instilled in her. Despite the simplicity of their lives, their bond was immense, a safe harbor for the girl who had lost her mother. Her mother's death during Victoria's childhood left a deep mark on her soul, but her grandparents did everything they could to ensure she never felt alone. The absence of the father she had never known was a shadow that lingered in her heart. Elizabeth, with her sweet yet firm demeanor, often shared stories about Victoria's mother, recounting how she was a strong and courageous woman. Each word carried a blend of longing, pride, and pain. Victoria's father had disappeared as soon as he learned of the pregnancy, leaving her mother to face life's challenges on her own. This created a void in Victoria's memories, a space where a father's love had never resided. Growing up, she knew abandonment was part of her story, but it somehow strengthened her resolve to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. Oliver, with hands weathered by years of labor at sea, often told Victoria that life could be harsh, but resilience and perseverance were key to moving forward. He was a man of few words, but each piece of advice he gave carried the weight of a life devoted to honest work and family. To Victoria, her grandfather was a figure of quiet wisdom, someone she trusted implicitly. It was he who taught her the importance of persistence, of facing life's hardships head-on, and of transforming sorrow into strength to overcome whatever obstacles came her way. Despite the absence of a father and the early loss of her mother, Victoria found the love and support she needed to grow strong in her grandparents. They taught her that past scars didn't define who she was. What mattered was how she chose to confront the challenges life presented. Over time, she learned to live with these voids, turning the rejection of an absent father into motivation to become an independent and resilient woman. The streets of the small village became the stage where Victoria was shaped, learning from her family's struggles and the hard work they faced day by day. Yet, deep within her soul, questions about the father she never knew continued to echo. Who was he? Why had he abandoned her before she was even born? These unanswered questions lingered, and despite all the love she received from her grandparents, the emptiness left by her father's absence was something Victoria would eventually have to confront. This journey was only beginning, as life held many surprises and challenges for her, along with the love and disappointments that awaited her in the days to come. Victoria always had Molly by her side, her loyal dog who accompanied her on all her adventures. On the beach, she ran a small stand where she sold snacks and juices to fishermen and tourists passing through the village. It was a simple routine, but it brought her a certain comfort amidst life's sadness. Victoria's stand was more than just a workplace. It was a refuge, a place where she could chat with locals, listen to stories of the sea, and even laugh at jokes told by her customers. Molly, ever vigilant, seemed to know that his owner needed him, especially during moments of silence and solitude. Each day at the stand offered Victoria a new opportunity to distract herself and distance her thoughts from the past. She loved watching the seas ebb and flow while serving customers, and the gentle breeze from the water brought a sense of renewal. Although she adored her grandparents, she often wondered what life might be like if her mother were still around or if she ever met her father. But these thoughts were pushed to the back of her mind, buried beneath work and routine. Molly, always by her side, seemed to understand her emotions and remained faithfully at her side, even on her hardest days. Victoria's stand was small but always bustling. Fishermen arrived at dawn, tourists came at noon, and by evening, the beach was filled with families and couples enjoying the sunset. Victoria knew every face that passed by, but when John appeared, her routine shifted. He was the son of a local farmer, and though his presence was familiar in the village, their paths had never crossed this closely. When he approached her stand to buy something, a new feeling began to stir in Victoria's heart. What was once just a common job by the beach now carried a different kind of excitement each time she saw him. Molly, ever observant, seemed to notice the change in Victoria's behavior. Each time John appeared, her smile grew a little wider, her eyes sparkled differently, and even the fisherman remarked on how distracted she became when the young man was nearby. John, too, seemed interested in her, returning to the stand more frequently until one day, under a clear sky with a gentle breeze, he decided to linger. Their conversations began to flow naturally, and what started as simple exchanges about the weather and the sea soon deepened into something much more profound. John's presence unearthed feelings Victoria had long buried. She found herself increasingly drawn to their conversations and slowly discovered that he, too, faced his own struggles. Their exchanged glances grew more intense, and each farewell at the stand left a void that both tried to conceal. Molly, on the other hand, seemed to approve of Victoria's new friend, warming up to John, as if he instinctively knew the young man was bringing something good into his owner's life. With each passing day, Victoria felt herself edging closer to a new chapter in her story. John, the farmer's son, carried a shadow in his life that few knew about. To many, he was simply the heir to a large property, living an ostensibly peaceful life. However, his reality was quite the opposite. His relationship with his stepmother, Emily, was a constant torment. Since his father had remarried, John felt like a stranger in his own home. Emily treated him with contempt, always making a point to exclude him from important decisions and belittling him in front of the staff and visitors. For John, her presence was a poison that corroded any semblance of familial harmony. Emily made no effort to hide her disdain for John. To her, he was an obstacle, someone who didn't fit into her plans to control the estate and her husband. John, in turn, harbored deep resentment toward his father, who always sided with his new wife, ignoring his son's feelings. The house, once his sanctuary, had become a hostile environment where he felt constantly humiliated and dismissed. Even the farm work, which had once brought him joy and satisfaction, now felt like a mechanical obligation, a way to escape the conflicts that consumed his days. Despite the toxic atmosphere at home, John found solace in Victoria. Their conversations at the beach stand, which had started innocently, quickly became his refuge. He felt comforted by Victoria's simplicity and sincerity, qualities absent in his family life. Her smile, Molly's unwavering companionship, and the way she spoke about the sea helped him forget, if only for a moment, the chaos awaiting him back at the farm. Each visit to the stand was a breath of fresh air in the emotional storm his life had become. John knew his family would never approve of a relationship with Victoria. To them, she was beneath him, a snack vendor with no status or wealth. But none of that mattered to him. Each time he was near her, the world seemed to make a little more sense. He wanted to be close to her, not just to escape his family problems, but because something deeper was growing within him, a passion he didn't know how to contain. Yet, beneath this attraction also lay a rebellious streak, a desire to defy his stepmother and father, who had already attempted to arrange a marriage for him with a wealthy young woman in the region. Determined to break free from his family's control and the constant pressure from his stepmother, John made an impulsive decision. He would propose to Victoria. It wasn't just because he loved her. It was also to thwart his stepmother's plans. He knew Emily would be furious, and for the first time in a long while, John felt he had the power to upset her, to challenge the suffocating grip she had on his life. At the same time, he wanted to protect Victoria from any judgment or scorn that might come from his family. And so, with his heart torn between love and defiance, John prepared to take the next step. The wedding between John and Victoria was a simple affair, unassuming, but its impact was far deeper than either of them could have anticipated. Victoria, though in love with John, didn't know that his decision to marry her was a mixture of love and rebellion. She believed that marrying him would finally bring her the life she had always dreamed of, alongside someone who seemed to understand and love her. But when she moved to the farm, reality began to show its claws in painful and cruel ways. From the very first day, Victoria's presence was met with hostility from Emily and the rest of John's family. Emily, in particular, harbored a profound aversion to Victoria. To her, the young woman was nothing but an intruder, someone without status, refinement, or a notable family background. The stepmother made it a point to treat her with disdain, belittling her in front of the staff and making it clear that, in that house, Victoria was nothing more than an unwanted burden. John's sisters, influenced by Emily, mirrored her behavior, turning every day in the household into an emotional battle for Victoria. What should have been a fresh start with her husband had turned into a prison, where love felt distant and humiliation was constant. John, meanwhile, did little to shield Victoria. Though he loved her, he was so entangled in his own internal conflicts with his family that he grew increasingly distant. The demands of running the farm consumed him, and he spent long days away from home, leaving Victoria to face Emily's hostility and the family's disdain alone. The young woman who had once radiated joy on the beach, selling her snacks with Molly at her side, now found herself isolated, surrounded by people who took every opportunity to remind her she was unwelcome. With every sneer, with every cruel word, Victoria felt her spirit dim a little more. As time went on, the situation became unbearable. Victoria tried to stay strong, but John's lack of support and Emily's relentless contempt wore her down. Then came an unexpected proposition. John was offered a job at a farm in another state with a high salary and good working conditions. Faced with the family turmoil, he decided to accept the offer, but with the condition of going alone first to evaluate the place. He promised Victoria he would return for her once everything was settled. Though saddened and fearful of being left behind at the farm, Victoria agreed, hoping this new chapter might bring some relief. However, John's departure only paved the way for new problems. With him gone, Emily felt she had free rein to act. Without even the minimal protection John provided, Victoria became more vulnerable to her stepmother-in-law's schemes. She tried to keep herself busy on the farm, tending to chores and ignoring the provocations, but the loneliness and sadness grew with each passing day. What Victoria didn't know was that Emily had a far more sinister plan in mind, one that would not only threaten her marriage but also her freedom and dignity. While John was away, something dark began to take shape, orchestrated by the woman who despised Victoria the most. While John was gone, Emily set her Machiavellian plan into motion to remove Victoria from her stepson's life for good. The stepmother had nurtured a deep hatred for the young woman since the beginning of her relationship with John. But now, with him absent, she felt free to act without restrictions. Emily devised a scheme not only to separate the couple, but to utterly destroy Victoria's reputation. The first step of her plan involved framing Victoria for a crime she didn't commit: the theft of a valuable family heirloom. The heirloom, an emerald necklace that had been in John's family for generations, was carefully planted among Victoria's belongings. Cold and calculated, Emily contacted the police, claiming the necklace had gone missing and that Victoria, with her modest background, must have taken advantage of the situation to steal it. When the authorities arrived at the farm, they found the necklace hidden in Victoria's things, just as Emily had planned. Victoria desperately tried to defend herself, insisting she had no idea how the necklace ended up there. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. She was taken into custody, accused of theft, and news of the incident spread quickly throughout the region. Stunned and humiliated, Victoria was imprisoned. Emily's scheme had worked flawlessly. With John far away and no one to defend her, Victoria was tried and kept in jail for a time, facing the scorn of a community that now saw her as a thief. The pain of her husband's absence, combined with the humiliation of being falsely accused, was devastating for the young woman. Each day spent behind bars chipped away at her hope for a happy life with John. Memories of simpler times, selling snacks by the beach and surrounded by joy, now felt like a distant, unreachable dream. But Emily's plan didn't stop there. Knowing that prison alone wouldn't be enough to sever John and Victoria's bond permanently, she went even further. Emily forged a letter, supposedly written by John and addressed to Victoria in prison, stating that he had never truly loved her. The contents of the letter were crushing. John claimed that their marriage was nothing more than a way to defy his family and that he wanted a divorce as soon as possible. When Victoria read the cruel words, it felt as though the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Everything she believed in, all the love she felt for John, was shattered in an instant. The final blow came when Emily sent another forged letter, this time to John, who was still in another state. In the letter, Victoria allegedly confessed that she never loved him and had only married him for his family's wealth. The letter stated that she wanted a divorce immediately and could no longer endure life with him. When John read the cold, calculated words, he was heartbroken. He had believed in Victoria's love, but now those words made him doubt everything. Feeling betrayed and unaware that it was all part of Emily's devious scheme, John decided not to return to the farm. And so, the fates of both Victoria and John were cruelly manipulated by Emily, who believed she had finally achieved her goal. Meanwhile, Victoria struggled to cope with the whirlwind of emotions she was enduring in prison. She felt betrayed, not only by the cruel twists of fate that had put her in such an unjust position, but also by John, the man she thought she loved. The words of Emily's forged letter echoed in her mind like a relentless poison, corroding her hope and the love she once felt. Amid this emotional chaos, something unexpected and equally devastating happened. Victoria discovered she was pregnant with John's child. The news, which should have been a source of joy, left her even more shaken. How could she raise a child in the midst of such turmoil? Without a father, without a family, and now without even her own freedom? The weight of her pregnancy was compounded by the loss of her grandparents, Elizabeth and Oliver. While in prison, Victoria received the tragic news that the small house she had grown up in the fishing village, had caught fire. Her grandparents had not survived, and everything she had ever known and loved was destroyed in an instant. Alone in her cell, Victoria felt the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. With her grandparents gone, she had nowhere to go once released from prison. The baby she carried in her womb would be the only living reminder of John, and the responsibility of raising the child in such a hostile environment was overwhelming. The days in prison were long and lonely. Victoria didn't know what to do or where to go once she was freed. Memories of her time on the beach, selling snacks and juices with Molly, her loyal dog, felt like they belonged to another life, one she could no longer reach. Every morning was a battle to gather the strength to keep going. Her body began to show signs of pregnancy, bringing with it aches, discomfort, and doubts. Yet the deep sadness she carried was heavier than any physical pain. Victoria, who once believed in a future with John, now found herself utterly alone, facing the daunting challenge of motherhood in a desolate world. But time passed, and the day finally came when Victoria was released from prison. She left the bars behind, but the emotional scars remained. Without family, without a home, and pregnant, she wandered to a nearby town in search of a fresh start. She knew that to survive and provide a decent life for the baby she was about to bring into the world, she needed a job. Her options were limited, but her determination was strong. During her search, she stumbled upon an unexpected opportunity, a position working in the home of a wealthy man named William. Once again, fate would play a surprising role in her life. William, a man haunted by his past, had accepted Victoria without hesitation, even knowing she was pregnant. He was an enigmatic figure, burdened with regrets, especially for having abandoned his pregnant girlfriend many years ago. A bond quietly began to form between the two, not just as employer and employee, but as two people connected by an unspoken understanding of shared pain. Victoria, having endured so much suffering, found in William someone who, perhaps unknowingly, understood her grief. In the home of this man weighed down by his own guilt, Victoria began to rebuild her life, unaware that fate had yet another profound revelation in store for her. As the months passed, the connection between Victoria and William grew unexpectedly strong. She was no longer just an employee. Over time, she became a trusted confidant, someone William could share his torment with. He, in turn, provided her with what she desperately needed, a safe haven, a sanctuary amid the chaos her life had become. During this time, Victoria gave birth to her daughter, Stephanie, a moment of profound emotion and renewal. The arrival of her child filled Victoria with a newfound purpose, a reason to fight harder and rise above the trials she had faced. William was deeply moved as he watched Victoria care for Stephanie with unwavering love, despite the hardships she had endured. He saw in Victoria the strength he had always wished he'd had as a young man when he abandoned his own pregnant girlfriend. This parallel in their paths drew him closer to her, and he began to open up more. Driven by remorse and the pain of his past mistakes, William shared his story with Victoria, revealing how he had left behind a woman carrying his child and had lived ever since with the weight of that decision. Victoria, who intimately understood the pain of abandonment, listened with empathy, recognizing the deep scars they both carried. Encouraged by Victoria, William made a life-altering decision. He resolved to search for the daughter he had abandoned so many years ago. The thought of finally meeting his child filled him with both fear and hope. Through the help of a private investigator, William launched a discreet but determined search for the daughter he had never known. Meanwhile, his relationship with Victoria deepened, and she supported him through every step of this journey. For Victoria, helping him was like guiding someone along a path that, in many ways, mirrored her own. Then came the revelation that would change everything. The investigator William had hired uncovered an astonishing truth. The daughter he had been searching for was none other than Victoria, the woman he had taken in, the same person he admired and who had worked in his home. The discovery was overwhelming for both of them. For William, it was a mix of relief and joy to realize he had, in some way, unknowingly begun to make amends for his past. For Victoria, the shock of learning that the man who had offered her refuge and care was her biological father brought a flood of emotions she couldn't immediately process. In time, forgiveness came naturally. William's actions, giving her a job when she was pregnant and, above all, the kindness he showed to her and Stephanie, proved his willingness to atone for the past. Victoria, who had always valued honesty and care, found it within herself to forgive him for his earlier abandonment because she saw in him the same desire for redemption she sought for herself. Now, she was no longer just a young woman trying to survive. She had become the heiress to William's empire and, more importantly, had found a new family to cherish and love. With her life transformed, Victoria emerged as a respected figure in society. Alongside her father, William, she began managing the family's business empire, which now also belonged to her and her daughter, Stephanie. The young woman who once sold snacks on the beach to make ends meet was now a powerful and respected woman of means. Yet, her strength was not defined by her newfound wealth but by her unbreakable inner resolve. She used the lessons she had learned from her humble beginnings and her journey of overcoming adversity to make wise decisions in business. While the world that once looked down on her now admired her, Victoria understood that her greatest triumph was her personal liberation. As Victoria thrived in her professional and personal life, John, the man she had loved so intensely, found himself unable to forget her. Despite the passage of time, memories of Victoria lingered in his mind. The love he felt for her had not diminished. On the contrary, it had grown stronger with the distance. When he learned the truth about her time in prison and the lies that had torn them apart, he was overcome with anguish. John realized he had been deceived, just as Victoria had, but that knowledge did little to lessen the pain of losing her. Now, more than ever, he was determined to find her. John began his search in earnest. He visited the prison where Victoria had served her sentence and spoke with those who had known her there. He learned that she had left the prison just days before giving birth, alone and with no one to support her. The despair this knowledge brought him was overwhelming. How could she have endured so much without him knowing? The guilt consumed him, and he refused to believe Emily's claim that Victoria had died in the fire. Driven by determination, John continued his search, scouring every place he thought she might be, but with no success. The emptiness in his heart only grew with each passing day. Meanwhile, Emily, ever cunning, did everything in her power to convince John that Victoria was dead and that it was pointless to keep searching for her. She knew that as long as Victoria was out of John's life, she could maintain her influence and control over him. But John, though broken, couldn't accept her lies. He had been deceived once before, and his instincts told him that Victoria was still alive somewhere. The pain of being torn away from the love of his life, combined with his regret for not trusting her more, left him sleepless, and his work began to suffer. The once confident and strong John was now a shadow of his former self. Eventually, life took its toll. John was fired from his job in another state as his productivity plummeted. Aimless, without the love of his life and without employment, he found himself lost, consumed by his thoughts. But it was in this moment of vulnerability that fate intervened once again. Seeing a job advertisement for a position on a farm, John decided to take a chance. Little did he know that this opportunity would lead him directly back to Victoria, giving him a chance to seek forgiveness and perhaps rekindle the love he had lost. But was Victoria ready to receive him? Would their reunion be peaceful, or would it reopen old wounds? When John finally arrived at the farm mentioned in the ad, he was unprepared for the shock awaiting him. Greeted by Victoria, he was stunned. She too couldn't believe her eyes. After so much time, so many trials and missed chances, there John was, standing before her, asking for a chance to explain what had happened. Yet the anger and resentment Victoria had harbored over the years couldn't be easily ignored. The man she had once loved and who had abandoned her was back, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to hear him out. At first, Victoria refused to even let John step inside her home. To her, the past was buried, and reopening it would only bring back the pain she had fought so hard to overcome. But as she saw the desperation in John's eyes and the weight of the words he so urgently needed to say, something within her wavered. Reluctantly, Victoria decided to give him a chance to speak. John then showed her the letter he had received, supposedly written by Victoria, in which she claimed she had never loved him and was only interested in his money. At that moment, Victoria realized they had both been victims of the same cruel scheme. Stunned and emotional, Victoria revealed that she, too, had received a letter from John while in prison, filled with disdain and accusations. That letter had shattered her heart, and for a long time, she truly believed that John had cast aside all the love they once shared. Now, face to face, they both began to piece together the puzzle of their painful separation. The resentment Victoria had carried started to dissipate as the full extent of Emily's manipulation came to light. Both had been betrayed and abandoned by someone who should have protected them. With a heavy heart, John confessed to Victoria that throughout all the time they were apart, he had never stopped loving her. He recounted the sleepless nights, his desperate attempts to find her, and his regret for believing the lies in the forged letter. He knelt before her, pleading for a second chance, a chance to rebuild the love they had lost because of deceit. Victoria, though still burdened by the scars of the past, felt something within her begin to soften. She could see the sincerity in John's words, but her life had changed drastically. Victoria then shared her story with John. She told him about her new life and how she had discovered that William, her employer, was actually her biological father. She explained how she had become a powerful woman, managing the family business and raising her daughter, Stephanie. The shock in John's eyes was unmistakable. He had no idea how much Victoria had suffered during her imprisonment, and learning of the existence of a daughter nearly brought him to his knees. He realized that he had not only lost Victoria but also a child he had never known. Overcome with emotion, he begged for a chance to be part of their lives. The revelation of a daughter left John reeling. He had no idea that Victoria had been pregnant while he was away, misled by the lies Emily had planted. The regret hit him like a tidal wave. How could he have let all of this slip through his fingers? How could he have believed the lies and abandoned the woman he loved, along with a child he never even knew existed? John's heart, already weighed down with guilt, now burned with a desire to make amends and be part of Stephanie's life. He pleaded with Victoria to give him a chance to become part of their family, but her pride and the pain she still carried kept her guarded. Victoria listened to John's pleas, her emotions a storm of anger, sorrow, and faint hope. She saw his remorse and the love in his eyes, but the wounds left by his absence and Emily's treachery weren't easily healed. For the first time in years, she was in control of her life, no longer a victim of circumstance. Stephanie was her priority, and while part of her longed to give John the chance he sought, another part feared opening her heart again. Would she risk the life she had built to give the man who once walked away from her a place in their lives? Or would she finally choose to close that chapter forever? Only time would reveal the answer. Victoria, who had built her life far from the shadows of her past, found herself torn. On one hand, her love for John had never entirely disappeared. It had simply lain dormant, buried beneath layers of hurt and disappointment. On the other hand, she was now a strong, independent woman with a daughter to protect and a legacy to uphold. Allowing John back into her life was tempting, but she feared reopening her heart only to be hurt again. Yet, when she looked into John's eyes, she saw sincerity, a sincerity that stirred feelings within her she hadn't expected. John, sensing Victoria's inner conflict, refused to give up. He knew the wounds he had caused ran deep, but he also knew their love wasn't entirely extinguished. He proposed a fresh start, far from everything that had torn them apart, away from family intrigues and society's stifling expectations. John wanted a new life, not only with Victoria but also with their daughter. He was willing to leave everything behind: his inheritance, his family, and the farm. All that mattered to him now was rebuilding Victoria's trust and love, and becoming the father he had never had the chance to be for Stephanie. Though cautious, Victoria felt her heart begin to soften. The man standing before her seemed so different from the one who had left her behind. There was humility in his voice, regret in his eyes, and unwavering determination in his words. Victoria knew her journey had been one of pain but also of resilience. She was no longer the naive girl she once was, and this newer version of herself knew she deserved love, but also loyalty and commitment. She considered John's proposal and, despite her reservations, couldn't help but entertain the possibility of giving him a second chance. At this pivotal moment, William, Victoria's father, stepped in. Having lost precious years with his daughter due to his own mistakes, he saw parallels between his past and John and Victoria's situation. He understood the weight of regret and poor decisions, and because of this, he decided to support John. William recognized that Victoria, with Stephanie and the family's considerable legacy to manage, would need someone by her side. If John was truly remorseful and willing to prove his love, William believed he deserved the chance to make amends and build a new future with Victoria and their daughter. With William's unexpected support, John felt a new sense of hope bloom. Now, with the blessing of Victoria's father, he saw that the path to winning her back was within reach. However, the most crucial piece was still missing: her forgiveness. Victoria, deeply moved by her father's gesture, found herself reflecting even more on her future. Deep down, she knew she still loved John, but the fear of being hurt again kept her heart guarded. Determined to prove his sincerity, John began to immerse himself in Victoria and Stephanie's lives. He spent more time with his daughter, learning what it meant to be a father, even as he navigated the early steps of this new role. Victoria observed closely, watching as John worked hard to bond with Stephanie. The sound of her daughter's laughter, the sight of John smiling genuinely while holding her, began to chip away at the walls Victoria had built over the years. Meanwhile, William, whose health was declining, also began relying more on John to assist with managing the family business. Despite having no prior experience in this realm, John committed himself fully, eager to prove not only to Victoria but also to himself that he could be the man she needed. Over time, the shared responsibilities and proximity softened the tensions between the three. Victoria began to see John not just as the man who had hurt her, but as someone striving to reclaim his place in her life. Months passed, and the closeness between John and Victoria grew. What once felt like an insurmountable chasm between them now seemed to narrow with each passing day. Though still cautious, Victoria could no longer deny what her heart was telling her. The love she had for John had never truly faded, and with every act of kindness towards Stephanie and every effort to care for their family, that love began to resurface. She knew that to move forward, she would need to overcome her fears of the past and open herself to the possibility of a new future. But the lingering question in her mind was whether John was truly ready for this fresh start. Finally, in a moment of raw honesty, Victoria decided to lay her heart bare. She sat down with John and, her voice trembling, recounted all the pain she had endured. Being wrongfully imprisoned, losing her grandparents, discovering her pregnancy alone. John listened intently, his face reflecting the deep regret of not being there for her when she needed him most. He apologized once more, not with empty words, but from the depths of his heart, vowing never to let her face anything alone again. Touched by his sincerity, Victoria made the decision to forgive him, but she was clear that this would be a new beginning, a fresh chance for both of them. John and Victoria sealed their forgiveness with a heartfelt embrace, but this time, something was different. The air was filled with the promise of a new beginning, free from the ghosts of the past. As if fate had aligned itself with their reconciliation, William offered John the opportunity to stay and work alongside him, helping to manage the family business. With his health deteriorating, William knew Victoria needed a partner who could uphold the legacy he had built. For John, this was a chance to prove himself not only as a husband but also as a father. John was now resolute in his goal, to win back Victoria's love and become an integral part of Stephanie's life. He began to take an active role in his daughter's routine, cherishing every moment with her, from the simplest tasks to the most memorable milestones. Each smile from Stephanie felt like a small victory, a sign that he was on the right path. Meanwhile, Victoria watched John's transformation with a mixture of surprise and admiration. The man who once seemed lost was now someone fighting every day to be better. She saw in him a newfound purpose, one that stirred the deepest parts of her heart. William, in his final years, saw in John not just a chance for redemption for the young couple but also for himself. He understood that his time was running out, and his greatest motivation was to see his daughter happy and in capable hands. He began teaching John the intricacies of the family business, passing on his knowledge in the hope that, when the time came, John would be ready to take the reins alongside Victoria. This mentorship drew the two men closer, fostering a mutual respect that grew stronger each day. Victoria, always strong and independent, realized that John's presence brought a balance she hadn't known she needed. He proved to be a true partner in every sense, supporting her in managing the responsibilities of the family business, while also being a devoted father to Stephanie. Slowly, her heart began to open once more to love. She knew there was still much to rebuild, but the fear that had once held her back was giving way to a budding hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, it was possible to leave behind the wounds of the past and create something new with John. Amid this new chapter in their lives, John finally found the courage to make the proposal he had been rehearsing for months. Kneeling before Victoria with unwavering eyes, he asked her to marry him again. This time, It wouldn't be a rushed marriage driven by defiance against his family. It would be a ceremony to celebrate true love, mutual respect, and the family they had built together. Victoria, tears streaming down her face, accepted his proposal, feeling that she was finally ready to start anew with the man she had never stopped loving. Their wedding was a celebration of profound emotion, this time reflecting the deep love they had rediscovered. The atmosphere on the farm had completely transformed. William, though increasingly frail, made it a point to be present. His face lit with satisfaction as he witnessed his daughter finding the happiness he had always hoped for her. The small ceremony, surrounded by close friends and colleagues, was more than a union of two people. It was a testament to their triumph over the countless obstacles that had almost torn them apart forever. The reception that followed was filled with pure joy and lightness. John, who had carried the weight of regret for so long, finally felt at peace. As he danced with Victoria under the stars, he looked at his wife with a gratitude that words could never express. Stephanie, radiant, watched her parents with shining eyes, feeling for the first time that she was part of a complete family. The sparkle in everyone's eyes was a reflection of the transformation they had undergone, from individuals weighed down by hurt to a couple united by love and understanding. William, deeply moved, observed the happiness of his daughter and son-in-law with a mix of pride and melancholy. He knew his time was running out, but he felt he could depart in peace, confident that Victoria and Stephanie were in good hands. The family business, now managed jointly by Victoria and John, flourished under their careful stewardship, and William felt reassured that the legacy he had built was secure. It was a bittersweet moment, full of meaning, as William found his own redemption in seeing his past mistakes corrected and his daughter safe and loved. As the months went by, life on the farm found a harmonious rhythm. Victoria, now more confident and fulfilled, shared the responsibilities of the business with John while they cultivated a loving home for Stephanie. The farm prospered under their care, and the surrounding village benefited from their generosity. Victoria and John made it a priority to support local families, offering jobs and fostering development in the fishing village where Victoria had grown up. Their story of perseverance and triumph became an inspiration to everyone around them. The cycle of pain, sorrow, and separation seemed finally broken, and the love that bound them had been forged in adversity. Now it blossomed in a fertile ground of companionship and respect. Victoria and John understood that true love wasn't built solely in moments of happiness, but also in the trials, daily struggles, and overcoming of past wounds. They knew challenges lay ahead, but they were ready to face them together, strengthened by their shared experiences and the promise of a bright future with Stephanie. Over time, the bond between Victoria and her father grew stronger. William, who had once carried the guilt of abandoning Victoria's mother, now saw in his daughter a chance to atone for his mistakes. He shared with her the knowledge and experience he had accumulated over the years, and Victoria cherished every moment, not just as an opportunity to learn, but also to understand the man he truly was. Although the scars of the past remained, their relationship deepened, and the forgiveness Victoria had long sought found its place in her heart. With John by her side, Victoria managed to balance the demands of her father's business with the responsibilities of her family. Once an unjustly imprisoned woman, scorned by society, she now stood as a leader with a life transformed. The love of John and the presence of Stephanie gave her strength, and each day became a new opportunity to demonstrate that her resilience wasn't just a result of circumstances but a testament to her ability to endure and thrive despite the storms. Even so, William's health continued to decline. Victoria knew their time together was limited, which made her treasure every moment even more. William, though frail, was at peace, knowing he would leave his daughter in capable hands. He saw in John a man of integrity who loved Victoria sincerely and knew that when his time came, his family would be safe. With a sense of gratitude and redemption, William spent his final days surrounded by the love of Victoria, John, and little Stephanie, leaving them a legacy of love, wisdom, and resilience. Since the moment John found Victoria again, he knew he couldn't live without her. Yet, the road to complete forgiveness was still long. Although Victoria had reconciled with John, she continued to carry the scars of all that had happened. The memories of the forged letters, the unjust imprisonment, and the loss of her grandparents haunted her. But seeing John by her side, determined to fight for their happiness, began to ease her pain. She knew he had suffered too, and slowly, the love she felt for him grew stronger once again. Life on the farm settled into its routine, but now there was a renewed energy. John was determined to prove, not just to Victoria but also to himself, that he could be the man she deserved. Every day he worked hard, whether tending to the farm or in the small acts of care and affection for Stephanie. He knew that the little girl, the product of the love between him and Victoria, was the bond that would unite them forever. Each of Stephanie's smiles was a reminder that, despite everything, love had triumphed. Victoria, meanwhile, divided her time between the farm and managing her father's business. Now the heiress of a major company, she had to shoulder responsibilities she had never imagined. John's support, however, made it all more bearable. He was present, not just as a companion, but as a true partner. Gradually, the balance between work and family fell into place, and Victoria began to realize that with John by her side, everything seemed less burdensome. The future, once uncertain, now appeared hopeful. Yet, despite their achievements, the pain of the past still loomed. John, on several occasions, tried to bring up the painful topics, the forged letters, the unjust imprisonment, the fire that claimed her grandparents. But Victoria, though stronger, still avoided delving deeply into these issues. She knew she would have to confront these wounds to move forward completely, but she wasn't ready yet. John understood and gave her the space she needed, waiting patiently for the day when they could close that chapter together. As time went on, the bond between John and Victoria, strengthened by their shared struggles, continued to flourish. Forgiveness, once a distant possibility, began to feel within reach. Amid this process, Victoria finally realized that while the past couldn't be erased, love and resilience had the power to heal even the deepest wounds. The path she and John had walked together was filled with pain, but it was also a journey of learning and growth. Now, they were ready to embrace this new phase of life with love and hope, alongside Stephanie, building the future they had always dreamed of. As their lives stabilized, new challenges arose. William, Victoria's father, had become a cornerstone of her life, but his health was steadily declining. The quiet days on the farm were often interrupted by concerns over his condition. Victoria knew it was her duty not only to manage the farm and the family business but also to be there for her father, who had grown increasingly frail. The weight of these responsibilities was immense, but John was always by her side, offering his unwavering support and love. William, having made peace with his past, understood that his time was limited. Each day, he watched with pride as Victoria grew into a strong, determined woman filled with love for the family she was building. Stephanie, his granddaughter, became his greatest joy in his final years, offering him the comfort of knowing his legacy would live on through her, guided by the values he had come to cherish. Despite his pain and weakness, William found peace, surrounded by those he loved. During the more difficult moments, Victoria couldn't help but feel the absence of her grandparents, Elizabeth and Oliver, who had raised her. Often in silence, she reflected on their teachings and how they had always encouraged her to be strong and independent. Now, faced with so many challenges, she realized that strength was deeply rooted in her. Though she missed them dearly, she knew she was honoring their legacy by building a family and confronting life's difficulties with courage and determination. John, on the other hand, had finally found his place beside Victoria. He had left behind the hurts of the past, the estrangement from his family, and was fully committed to building a happy life with her and Stephanie. He knew that challenges would continue to arise, but he was ready to face them, as long as he had Victoria by his side. The love that had once seemed destroyed by lies and betrayal had been reborn, stronger than ever. John understood that his priority now and always would be his family. In William's final days, Victoria and John remained by his side, caring for his last wishes and ensuring his comfort. The farm and the business were already under Victoria's capable management, and she knew that in time, she would take full control. But at that moment, her focus was entirely on her father. When William finally passed, he left a void but also a sense of peace, knowing that Victoria was in good hands and that his family was complete at last. After everything Victoria had endured, abandonment, betrayal, the lies that nearly destroyed her life, she found within herself the strength to forgive and move forward. What began as a simple life in a fishing village had transformed into a journey of self-discovery, resilience, and a second chance at true love. With John and Stephanie by her side, she realized that the challenges she had faced had shaped her into a stronger, wiser, and more fulfilled woman. Now, surrounded by the love of her family, Victoria proved that no matter how relentless fate may be, it can still be rewritten with persistence, courage, and forgiveness. Her path was arduous, but she had found her freedom and, with it, the true meaning of happiness. If you felt touched by this story, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next inspiring tales. Because just like Victoria, each of us has the power to rewrite our destiny.